Alright, so I know I'm a little late to the party, but I saw the Northman that long ago and I have to talk about it. I want to mention that upon leaving the theater, I couldn't help but hear some of the other moviegoers sharing their disappointment with the film. Some of the things I heard were how boring or underwhelming it was, and some were wishing that there was more action, like in 300, and I just remember thinking to myself how I couldn't possibly disagree more. The Northman is an amazing experience, and while everyone is entitled to their opinions, I think this might be the best movie I've seen so far in 2022, and let me tell you why. Now, like those leaving the theater disappointed, there were more that left the theater visibly impressed or still trying to process what it is they had just seen. I saw this movie with my brother and my cousin, and on that walk from the theater to the car, it was kind of quiet. And I think that's because we were processing too. Processing this visual masterpiece we just witnessed. The Northman is one of the best shot films I've seen in a long time, especially in the action genre. Director Robert Eggers is no stranger to creating unique visuals, and if you're a fan of Eggers' previous works, such as The Witch or The Lighthouse, you know exactly what I mean. For those of you unfamiliar with the director's past films, they tend to have this dreamlike, almost like you're having the most beautiful nightmare feel to them. And the Northman is no different, as it blends the real and surreal to create this world that's both bleak and dark, yet somehow full of color and beauty at the same time. I would even be willing to say the color palette used in this film is probably its most vibrant to date, but never feels overly stylistic like, say, a 300 or even a Gladiator or whatever the fuck this movie Gods of Egypt was trying to do. For as steeped in lore and imagery as the Northman is, it feels pretty realistic. Even the fight sequences feel natural and fluid. Eggers and his team of cinematographers use an array of tracking and panning shots to allow us to see the action play out. One scene in particular practically uses no cuts, and this allows us to feel like we're watching actual events from 1,000 years ago instead of a movie. By the way, the action is some of the most brutal and unrelenting stuff I've seen in a long time. It's violent, but not unnecessarily violent, as you feel like the goal is to kill, and do so quickly. There aren't any cute poses or wasted movements. Everything feels purposeful, and this only adds to the realistic feeling. And then there's this scene. My man catches a spear straight up out of midair and throws that shit back. I was already interested in the movie, but I'm not gonna lie to you. Seeing this in the trailer made me want to pre-order my tickets right then. Seriously, we gotta check this out again. Now, the film's visuals and action aren't the only things that are authentic about the film. From what I've been able to find through a little bit of research is that this is one of the most accurate portrayals of Vikings in or around the Nordic regions. From the clothes worn to the weapons used, and even the religious or spiritual practices were shown on screen. Decorations and artifacts that have been preserved from actual Viking burial sites were used throughout the film. Alexander Skarsgård, who plays the lead character Amaleth, even decided and practiced how to do certain things in order to make sure things were reminiscent of the Northman he was trying to play. In an interview with Mashable, he states he actually learned how to row a Viking longboat, and apparently that shit's a little bit difficult, but he makes it look fairly easy in the film. However, what's maybe more impressive is that Eggers made sure the boat was practically an exact replica of the types of boats Vikings would have used, all the way down to the nails that would have been used thousands of years ago. While this adds to the authentic look of the film, the mythology and lore used also appears to be pretty faithful. I'll be honest, I knew the bare minimum about Vikings, but this film made me look up certain things, such as these rituals that were performed and/or the gods mentioned in the film, only to find that the majority of them were all inspired by actual things. For example, the Berserkers, the animalistic tribe of Vikings Amalith joins as an adult, they were based off of a real group of Vikings. In real life, the group were called this because it was believed they would transform or go berserk before battle, unleashing these animalistic traits. This is in fact what we do see happen in the film, and it's one of the movie's best and most entertaining scenes when we see them go through this ritual. Even the crazy-ass ritual Amalith and his father engage in at the beginning of the movie seems to be based off of some sort of real initiation that used to take place during these times. The Vikings would often seek the word of a seeress or witches during rituals, and oftentimes psychedelic substances were used to create or enhance visions. This is exactly what happens in the film, and it's one of the most memorable sequences I've seen in a movie in a long time. Now, I know you're probably tired of hearing me say this, but the film is seriously full of scenes unlike anything I've seen before or in recent memory. The movie is littered with detail throughout, but perhaps my favorite aspect is that it doesn't really portray any of the Vikings as heroes or bad guys. It simply shows a way of life for many during that time, and I appreciated that. Even our main character Amalith's character can be put into question, but the lore and mythology of the film gives us reason for his actions in place of justification. We see why Amalith is the way he is, and this leads to another aspect that I loved about the film. The movie covers many themes subtly, which is probably the best aspect of the film in my opinion. There are themes of betrayal, choice, and the inevitability of one's actions finally catching up to them. But perhaps the greatest themes are manipulation and corruption of innocence. The story begins with Amalith as a child, and we get to see how a young boy idolizes his father, right? For those lucky enough to have a father figure, it's probably understandable to see how Amalith does look up to his dad. However, it also shows how naive kids can be to the larger picture that may be at hand. It's hard to know the truth for sure, but Amalith discovers some hard and uncomfortable things about his father as an adult that contradicts everything he knew about his father as a kid. He learns this through his mother, that his dad maybe wasn't the most fair and honorable man he thought he was, and that his uncle could have indeed been the more honorable figure. And then by his dad making him go through this ritual to become his successor, it sets into place the vengeful life Amalith would lead into adulthood, steering him down this path of hate and violence. Now, it's possible his mother could be lying. After all, she did try to have the boy killed, but I really don't think it matters what's true or what's not true, who's good or who's bad. I think the point is the toxicity, regardless of what's true. There's no doubt his dad loved him, but there were things that Amalith maybe might not have understood as a child. He was born into a situation that was out of his control, and eventually it ended up shaping his entire life, much in the same way many of us are shaped by the events we face early on in our lives. The film, to me, at its core is a story of innocence and how life can ultimately chip away at that innocence, both blatantly and unassumingly. The Northman was a film that caught me off guard, both because it wasn't what I expected and because I was pleasantly surprised by the experience I got. It's truly unlike any film I've seen recently, especially for this genre of film and a Vikings-focused plotline. The action is well done, but there's also a great story in there. The amount of care that Robert Eggers put into the film also demands some respect. Now, I have to say that this movie won't be for everyone, and if you're expecting an all-out action slaughterhouse type of Viking film, you may be a little disappointed. But I can honestly say this is the best film I've seen so far this year. Now, maybe that will change when I finally get around to watching Everything Everywhere All at Once, but for now, I have to give it to this Viking epic. The Northman gets an 8.8 out of 10 from me. Alright, so I'm back and I'm recording this a little bit later because I didn't want to end this video without speaking on the recent controversy surrounding this film. Basically, in short, white supremacists are self-claiming this film is being made for them. For one, I had no idea this was even a thing at the time of recording this video. And two, I can't conceive how some people living in the world today would even realistically compare themselves to the people, lore, and lives of a group of people that existed 1,000 years ago. That would be like me comparing myself to some badass ancient Zulu warriors hundreds of years ago. I can respect, study, and take pride in it, sure. I'm all for being proud of your heritage, history, and culture, which are really the only connections I can potentially see a white supremacist making with this movie. And even then, the fact they are white supremacists makes this feel a little bit different. This feels a little more like a calculated attempt to sustain some pretty idiotic and selfish ideas. Now, I can see some people potentially rebuttaling against this, looking along the lines of like when Black Panther came out and how black people were prideful and couldn't stop talking about how cool their culture and people are. And while this is true, we did do that, there are many differences with this argument compared to that of a white supremacist's. But the most obvious is that black culture largely didn't look at Black Panther as something that would now allow us to perpetuate concepts such as separatism, segregation, and ethno-states. White supremacists or white nationalists are a group of individuals that advocate for all of these ideas. They perpetuate the ideas of a sole white nation or white ethno-state ran by patriarchal leaders. Now, I'd be ignorant to not see that the Northman does fit this bill, as it takes place in a location full of white people and a time where there were male leaders and some subservient women. It exists in a time and place that would essentially be a white supremacist's wet dream, is what I'm trying to say. But the worst part is, I'm willing to bet for white supremacists, they're not even taking into consideration the attention to detail towards the other aspects of Scandinavian and Nordic culture, such as the lore, landscapes, tools, and weapons seen in the film. It's simply the depiction of a hyper-masculine white world that they wished they lived in. The delusion that they're all these tough, ripped dudes who are better than everyone, when indeed the film never once attempts to make that statement. If anything, director Robert Eggers expertly crafts a story that doesn't refrain from also showing how flawed and immoral things were during those times. But those aspects, I'm sure, land on deaf ears and blind eyes. With all this being said, I personally think that this is a movie many people of the same or relatable culture, white people, should be proud of. Its homage to the history is amazing, and I can see some people who really are about that Nordic life making these connections and really enjoying the film because of it. However, we have to be careful not to be naive to the agendas some will try to instill, unfortunately using this film to do so. It doesn't do anything but harm a great movie by giving it unnecessary controversy. For example, imagine if a large nationwide groups of black people known to mobilize and advocate for a black-only nation who supported the removal of all other races and claimed they were better than everyone else went and saw Black Panther and used it as a way to justify that message. That controversy would have forever tainted the film. And what would be worse is that if black groups perpetuating such hateful themes were as large scale as white supremacists or white nationalist groups, a film like Black Panther might not have even been made. Just like The Northman almost not being made because of white nationalism has done to the image of the Viking. If you don't believe me, here is a quote from director Robert Eggers himself. Overall, I won't let this controversy stop me from enjoying the film. And to you woke-ass lefties out there, you're not completely off the hook either. Yes, the film is predominantly white, deals with hypermasculinity to a degree, I guess if you want to call it that, but reducing it to just that discredits a pretty great film that deals with some pretty deep themes, all while being a visual masterpiece. And if we do this to The Northman, we would have to do it to every film or movie or piece of art that depicted life at a time where their way of doing things was different than ours. This would be like me hating Apocalypto because there were ultra-masculine men, they committed sacrifices, and there were no black dudes. I fucking love Apocalypto, and while I obviously don't agree with a lot of the shit they did in the film, I think it's important that it's accurate storytelling. Anyways, I really appreciate you guys taking in the time to get through this, and I'm sorry if my little rant at the end was a bit off-putting to some, but I felt the need to speak on it. Let me know how you guys feel in the comments below, hopefully mostly about this great film, but any and all comments are welcome. Let's keep it respectful, please. You guys be safe out there, and I'll catch you soon.